Hello and welcome to episode 58 of the Virtual Velo Podcast with me, Emma Martin, and my co-host, Chris Schwenker. Well, Chris, we have two guests today that the cycling esports community, well, they've got questions they would love to have answered, and they're going to want to hear what our guests have got to say.
Well, so do I, Emma, to be truthful. I first rode indieVelo in June of 2023 and became a strong supporter from day one. I believed in what Dr. Gilbert was building for cycling esports, and I did my part to spread the word through articles in the Zimmunique, Cycling Weekly, and Cycling News. Dr. Gilbert has also joined us on the podcast 3 times previously. On top of that, I've been a Training Peaks premium subscriber since 2016, so when I heard the news on my flight home from Abu Dhabi, I had mixed feelings. I wasn't entirely surprised, but I was shocked that the partnership turned out to be with Training Peaks.
Wow, and you and a number of the community as well, Chris, really wanting to explore the reasons behind, and I'm sure we are going to get to that today because thank you for joining us today, indieVelo founder Dr. George Gilbert and Dirk Friel, Training Peaks co-founder, former pro cyclist, son of triathlon and cycling coaching legend Joe Friel, and the chief evangelist for Training Peaks. So thank you both for joining us today.
No, thank you. It's lovely to be here again.
Same. This is going to be fun. Thanks for having us on.
Well, there are lots of questions and many topics to cover today, and it's an honour to have Dirk and George here to explore the nuances of the Training Peaks partnership with indieVelo, or should I say Training Peaks Virtual now. Before we do, Dirk, as the chief evangelist, could you share Training Peaks' history and mission for our listeners who may not be aware of Training Peaks yet?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, short, brief history. As you mentioned, I was a pro cyclist. My father is a pretty well-known coach. And in the mid-90s, I started coaching along with him when I was still racing. But it was pretty difficult to manage all the data back then in the mid-90s. We were using the fax machine and email attachments, like quite literally. We were sending programs through the fax machine and training logs were coming back via the fax machine. Again, and email attachments, et cetera. And so, I had this vision in 1999 of getting it all through this thing called the internet. We could all have a nice calendar and maybe someday it could be compatible with all the cool devices out there that were starting to come out, power meters and heart rate monitors and everything. And started working on it in 1999. We went live in 2000. And I would say from day one until today, we have the very same mission. We're serving the needs of the coach. I started it because I was a coach and I needed something to help me deliver a better quality service to my athletes. Just make that experience just so much better and higher quality coaching. And that's still what we do to today. So yeah, our mission hasn't changed.
Well, that's really great to hear because a lot has changed in the virtual cycling landscape. And I want to get into the big picture with you, George. And then we'll focus in on a couple of specific areas. The first question I will ask you, and on behalf of the community, is why? Why Training Peaks and why now? What motivated your decision to partner with Training Peaks?
It literally comes down to one word, and that's credibility. As we've talked about before many times, then the kind of purpose of indieVelo in the first place was all about serving committed athletes. It's about serving people who took their kind of training and racing seriously, people who wanted not a game, but an actual application that would really benefit them, their training and racing. And obviously, I partnered with Training Peaks since virtually day one because, when creating that kind of application, you go talk to Strava and talk to Training Peaks. That's kind of the first two things you go and partner with. And that kind of discussion with Training Peaks has kind of bubbled along in the background about, our mission, our values, our purpose has been aligned all the way through.
Dirk, in relation to Training Peaks and indieVelo, why add a virtual cycling platform to the Training Peaks offer?
Yeah, well, as we all know, it's here to stay. Indoor virtual training has evolved immensely over the years. It was kind of a novelty, and then it became like really a thing to do, and then it became like a thing some riders only do. They don't ride outside. So it's really proliferated throughout the cycling world. And then on the heels of that, it became a great way for coaches to prescribe training. You could actually control the environment. Now you can make it hot or cold. You can obviously control the length of the intervals exactly. You don't have to worry about stoplights and everything else on the road. The safety factor. So for many, many reasons, we all know it's here to stay. We saw more and more coaches obviously leveraging indoor training apps to prescribe workouts. But at the end of the day, none of the offerings out in the marketplace today were catering directly to the coach. And that's what we've done, again, from day one. So we saw an opportunity to really try and make this a seamless experience, if you will, for coaches to onboard athletes. And that's a very hard, difficult thing to do. If you go through all the steps of setting up some third-party app as well as an additional subscription model on top of ours, there's a lot of hurdles there. So, just making it so simple and just so simple for the coach to onboard athletes, and like this is the way to do it, And so I think there's a lot of opportunity that still exists between Training Peaks and Training Peaks Virtual in terms of synchronizing, and we can get into more of that. But we definitely saw this as somewhat of a hole to fill. Just like recently, we released about 3 months ago our strength training features. Coaches were relying on other third-party apps to deliver strength training programming. Now we have that within Training Peaks. There's videos, how to conduct the lift and set rep weight and all of that. So coaches immensely love having that all contained in one app. So this just was a continuation of that, just creating a better user experience for the coach-athlete relationship.
Who made the first serious call? When was that made? And was it like, aha, this is a perfect fit, or was there an evolution involved?
So from my point of view, indieVelo and Training Peaks have been talking in the background for quite some time, just as part of the natural relationship of indieVelo uploading workouts to Training Peaks. But then a couple of months ago, Training Peaks reached out to me with exactly the pitch Dirk has just given. In a single sentence, it was kind of, let's build a seamless experience that works for our coaches and athletes, for these kind of committed riders. And that's instantly an obvious hook. It doesn't take much selling because of this idea of, as Dirk said, that kind of subscription fatigue and the idea of having to set lots of different things up. You've just got a single application that deals with everything under a single log-on and a single subscription. It just makes everything easy. It was just such a really obvious partnership.
Yeah, I think communications just evolved throughout the time we've been working with George. And then I took the leap and flew over to London, and I had to have a tea with the International Man of Mystery. And so he it was all thumbs up from there. So that was in June is when I went over to have a nice tea with George.
Covent Garden, it's very pleasant.
Covent Garden is very pleasant, actually. Oh, dearie me. But and in terms of that, I mean, I get the one-stop shop approach for the coach, Dirk. I think, that's a really interesting concept, isn't it? Strength training, cycling esports, where riders could do training as well that coaches can benefit from. George, what about the core indieVelo user that's coming with you or wants to come with you? If this package and this aspiration from Training Peaks' perspective is this one-stop shop with everything involved to help the coaches, what about those traditional, longer-term indieVelo users?
I think to a large extent, then from their perspective, not a lot changes. The kind of core mission and ethos of indieVelo, so that tactically interesting racing and credible results that you can believe it, that they remain completely unchanged. And it's really important to say that one of the big selling points that Training Peaks kind of put to me when we started talking about this is essentially carry on as you are, and we'll add resources to help you do what you're currently doing even better and even faster. It's not a question of, let's break it up or merge it in or something like this. It's, we love what you're doing, keep doing it more. So yeah, that's obviously a good thing from the perspective of all the people who kind of came with indieVelo to begin with, because that core experience, that core authentic racing, the tactically interesting, the fact that you can believe in the results, that all remains completely unchanged.
Your core subscribers, your core Training Peaks premium subscribers, many of them don't know that they need a virtual cycling platform, right? What is going to be the first benefit that they realize from this acquisition?
Well, it's funny. I kind of think of the analogy of like a health club. And we are a health club chain. We have tens of thousands of locations around the world. And somehow overnight, we added a cycling studio. We didn't increase membership. We just added something to the benefit of the members. So if you are already a member of the health club, you may only go for the swimming pool. That's the only reason you pay for your health club membership, is for the swimming pool. But wow, now they have a spin class. They have, an indoor spin studio, right? So, in the future, you could take advantage of that if you want. And oftentimes with the seasonality, you do switch sports. You might complement with cross training, for example, as a runner. You might now think about doing indoor cycling. So for pure runners that are on Training Peaks, they now are aware that they can take advantage of this. And their coach is saying, hey, I've been preaching to you to do some cross training in the off season. They're like, oh, wow, I can try this new virtual indoor cycling thing, which I now have access to. They added it to my health club membership. So that's how I see it, as like an additional benefit for our current members that aren't even cyclists. It's just something they can take advantage of in the future. But certainly, I would say more than half of all of our subscribers are either a triathlete or a cyclist. And so by default right there, this is a possible benefit for more than half of our members today, again, with no increase in price. And by the way, it's free until at least April 1st for anybody to try. Yeah, so I do think of it more like a health club, where we're adding more and more benefits to the subscription, but yet we're not forcing you to get in the swimming pool. If you hate swimming, don't ever go swim. But it's there for your kid that wants to use it.
Yeah, and that works the other way around as well. If you look at it from the perspective of a former indieVelo user, then they're joining into a new health club here. And yeah, if you're not interested in using the rowing machine and the swimming pool and the weights, and you just want to ride your bike, well, that's fine. But for that subscription fee, you've got all these other things as well if you want them. It's not a question of suddenly being saddled with, hey, you must use all these extra benefits that you're getting. It's a load of extra stuff for free. It's a really compelling offer.
Yeah, I also have seen this over 25 years develop, and we've seen athletes' lives change. They've gone from serious junior cyclist to U23 to professional. They retire, they become a coach, and now they want to do a marathon. We've seen so many different iterations of what an athlete means within our 25 years, and your definition of an athlete does change throughout your life. And so we are kind of there for every step of the way.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? You are quite right. Over the last 25 years, things changed dramatically. Once upon a time, you got into your late 30s, you stopped racing and you started coaching or helping out or volunteering as a commissaire or in other ways. Nowadays, we see athletes competing well into their 70s and 80s very, very regularly and training right through that period. One of the other things I'd really love to get your perspective on, both of you, and I'll put this to George first. How do the two platforms match up philosophically? So it's my perception, George, that you built indieVelo around this vision of virtual racing, esports credibility. Training Peaks, on the other hand, deeply rooted in training support. Is indieVelo evolving to prioritise training over racing?
No, is the short answer. As I said before, it's about carrying on the existing platform, the existing ethos, but now adding extra stuff to it rather than removing stuff. What's interesting is it's not necessarily the details, but as you say, the philosophy behind it, and that position that I mentioned before, credibility. That's what it's all about. indieVelo was founded on credibility as being an utterly central pillar, and Training Peaks is founded on credibility as being an utterly central pillar. From a philosophical perspective, then that it's almost perfect overlap between the two companies.
And Dirk, what about Training Peaks? Where do you stand on this? Is Training Peaks getting into competitive cycling esports, or is it really looking for that training nugget?
Well, firstly, definitely the training, but certainly we're not going to ignore the racing component side of it. That's another reason it was very attractive, is because of that credibility. As an athlete, well, first of all, most all of our subscribers are training for a race. They have a race mentality. They have a goal that is a race. So therefore, as a coach, I need to prepare them for the race. Why not do training races along the way? So training and racing overlaps because you are preparing at the end of the day for an event, whether it be an indoor event or an outdoor event. But if we can make that more credible, more real within the training, that's going to help you on your actual race day. So I don't really see them so far apart. Certainly we will. Another thing I love about indieVelo, Training Peaks, Virtual, is we're not an inhibitor to race organizers. Anyone can create, when I say anyone, coaches, athletes alike, race event organizers can create their own races, but a race could be a training ride, and it could be a private, group ride, and you can go as hard or as easy as you want, and it's private. So all that credibility of the racing side of it comes into the training side as well. So it's a great way. It opens up a lot more possibilities for us. So we certainly want to inspire more of that racing scene to continue to grow.
So George, I wanted to go a little bit further into the philosophical debate. The first line of your original website stated indieVelo's vision, which was, imagine if online cycling were an Olympic sport. You described the two pillars as racing tactics and credibility. How does this move fulfill that vision?
So I genuinely don't believe that's changed. Obviously, then things like the Olympics are a big thing in the future, and we've got a way to go to kind of build up to get to that point. But that fundamental philosophy that the only way in which you can get a credible Olympic level event is to have a platform that is built from day one to have racing as part of its DNA. It's got to have that kind of sub-millimeter accuracy. It's got to have the ability to tell which riders won. Really basic stuff. And that has to be built in. You can't retrofit that. And so getting to this position where we've got a platform where your skills as a bike rider really matter, where your decisions matter. It's not just whoever's got the biggest legs wins. That's the core basis of fulfilling that Olympic vision. And now we've got that platform, we've got the ability to build. That's another step towards the way. It was never, ever going to be the case that one person writing code out of their spare bedroom can go to the Olympics. That was never a credible, line that this was going to go down. It was always going to be the case of partnering with someone. And the only question in my mind was, well, with who? And who better than a company that defines credibility in it for serious committed athletes?
Well, George, you were giving it a really good go, I have to say. Don't knock any credit off of your own back. But I do know I'm going to push it just a little bit. But and I don't know, George, whether you want to answer this, or Dirk, whether you do from a Training Peaks perspective. But Training Peaks Virtual, indieVelo has catered to the competitive elite cycling esports athlete. You know, a lot of racers love racing on the platform because of the things you've talked about, George. Will in the future Training Peaks Virtual potentially seek to host international events, maybe the Olympics, maybe bid for the World Championships, as well as top-tier cycling esports events? Or is this about racing and training?
Why not both? It is the short answer. Right now, you know, we're not aiming to compete against other apps for numbers or anything like that. Our focus is on credibility and trust. You know, we're not here to be the biggest. We're here to be the best. It's all about that, ensuring that we've got a platform where people want to race because it's interesting. You know, where your decisions matter, where you have to choose when to time an attack. Do you go into a headwind? Do you go into tailwind? Do you sit at the back of the bunch? Do you sit at the front of the bunch? All these things really matter, and the ability to have breakaways and to chase them down, and actual real life racing, but indoors. It's all those things that matter to us. If you build a great platform and athletes want to race on it, that's a massive win. We'll take that.
Dirk, is having the endorsement of the UCI, is that something that you consider a value or appealing for the direction that you're going here with Training Peaks Virtual?
It couldn't harm, but that's not top of the list. Obviously, a stamp of approval would be amazing and great. But, we're focused on, as I said, our number one view that we went after, or perspective, again, was from the coach, and how to make it as seamless as possible for them to onboard athletes into the virtual world and training experience. And then that will transcend and create even better esports athletes, better outdoor cyclists, better outdoor triathletes, e-triathlon. There's so many different directions it can go, and they're all contained within our offering. So I certainly would welcome a UCI stamp of approval, but it's certainly not necessary right now to have that. I don't know. I'm not even up to date with what that means. So
well, I hope that someday you are.
Yeah.
As far as you changing roles now, George, you're stepping into a new role with Training Peaks Virtual. Can you tell us what your new title will be with the company and what your roles and responsibilities will be going forward?
So I'm job title, I am Vice President of Virtual Platforms. So I am VP at TP, which is a deeply unfortunate set of acronyms.
That's the best.
But in terms of roles and responsibilities, I've got complete oversight for the virtual platform. Essentially, I'm continuing to run what was indieVelo, now as Training Peaks Virtual, but now at my disposal, thanks to Training Peaks, we've got a great engineering team, we've got a great marketing team, we've got HR teams and legal teams and all the other stuff that you would expect with a large company. We've now got on board so that we can actually progress at a much faster rate. As we were talking about before, the aim here is to add to the existing indieVelo rather than take anything away or merge or do anything that would slow the pace of progress down.
So, Dirk, from Training Peaks' perspective, what's the Training Peaks company structure like, and where does Training Peaks Virtual fit in? Where does George's role fit into the rest of the Training Peaks company?
I mean, much like every one of our other product development teams, they have to look at our world, all of our offerings holistically. And so the product managers kind of, know what's going on in other areas. The strength training is coming out, something else is coming out. They all know about it. So how does it fit? How do you fit the pieces together? How do you fit the puzzle together? We all sort of have to know what's happening concurrently across the entire business. So that's what's great about bringing George in as well. That kind of transfuses into him, and he can see more of our roadmap, and then that gets him excited. And there's new ideas around something we're leveraging in our workout library. How can we enhance our workout library at Training Peaks to be one and the same with Training Peaks Virtual or the calendar? Obviously now the master calendar will be at Training Peaks. So how does that interact with Training Peaks Virtual? Well, George has to know the manager of the Training Peaks master calendar, that product manager, what's happening there? What does their roadmap look like? So it's certainly not in any way a silo, but we need to work in coordination. But what's great with his work ethic is he's very, very fast and iterative. And so, we want to absorb more of that and give him more resources. So he'll lead in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's probably an understatement that George is organized and rapid in his development. Many of indieVelo's users came from RGT and are still traumatized by its failure, seemingly due to the lack of support following the Wahoo acquisition. They want a sign that this isn't another similar situation. So Dirk, will George maintain creative control over platform development? And what level of financial and human resource support and commitment will the project receive?
Well, overnight, I don't know how many, many more bodies are on his team now. He is now a manager. He manages more than himself. So immediately resource and financial backing was given. We lined it up before the deal was done. That way we were that confident in this happening that we lined up the resources for him. So on day one, he had those resources. In terms of reassurance, I don't like being compared obviously to other businesses, but fundamentally we have a very, very, very different business than any of the previous acquisitions that have failed. We have a built-in customer base already. I don't need to cut into anyone else's business. This is about servicing our current customer base and bringing more to them. And again, I look through the eyes of the coach. We have tens of thousands of coaching businesses. They've been wanting this. This is going to help them. This is going to help them stay on board. But at the same time, it's going to help them make money. We are primarily first a B2B business. Fundamentally, Wahoo was not B2B. Fundamentally, any other indoor app that you mentioned is not B2B. They're B2C. So we have businesses that we support, which in the end help consumers. You don't have to have a coach to use Training Peaks or to use Training Peaks Virtual. You can do it all on your own. But the reassurance is we've been here for 25 years. We're B2B. We're more solid. We've always, always, always made decisions for the long run, self-sustaining, profitable growth. I can say that for 25 years, still the case today. We don't have private equity. We've never had private equity. We've never had virtual capital. We've never had debt. This is the old school way of building businesses. It started bootstrapped, and now we self-fund. We made this acquisition off self-funding, off that self-sustaining, long-term, profitable business. So we do things smart, for the long haul, and I believe no other business can say that today that's in our space. So I can't guarantee, but I have strong convictions, and this is my life's work. I did not build this to sell it, and it's still the case today in my mid-50s. My dad still works for us, and he's in his mid-80s. So yeah, that's the best I can do in terms of reassurance.
Joking aside, George is absolutely known for his, not just his innovation, but his rapid development. And that is quite unprecedented. The speed at which he has been able to respond to the community, the indieVelo community. How are you guys going to cope with that at Training Peaks?
Well, I think he released a Monday release list. He's been working for us for a few weeks. So that is still happening. He's still rapidly developing against. And again, this is, voice of customer that, truly does need to be number one. As we've entered this new road with coaches, we need more coach feedback. So welcoming that feedback, and then that'll flow through into George's team. So yeah, we don't want to hold him back. We want to do better and great things. Sometimes great things take a while, but there's going to be numerous iterations along the way on a weekly cycle.
So George, In the past, you've mentioned on the podcast that you've positioned indieVelo as a service provider. And recently, platforms like Zwift utilized your governance services. This season, they moved away from that and chose to get their governance taken care of in other areas. With this acquisition, is it proof that the market was correct, that you were more of a competitor as time went on than a service provider? And does that preclude any further support of other entities going forward?
And fundamentally, that's a question for other companies rather than a question for me. But certainly from my perspective, that whole ethos of trying to build infrastructure first, that's the important thing. It's not about going and chasing users and being a competitor in this landscape. We're not trying to compete against other apps or anything like that. What matters is building really good, high quality software that helps improve the lives and training and racing of the people who choose to use it. That fundamental core attitude hasn't changed at all, and carries through to now being part of Training Peaks Virtual. As I said before, it's not about competing. It's about, it's not about trying to be the biggest. It's about trying to be the best.
So Dirk, the growth of indieVelo up to this point has been purely organic, word of mouth, without any formal advertising budget whatsoever. Will Training Peaks alter that approach? And if so, who is going to be your target audience? I want to know what the headline of your first marketing campaign is going to read.
Well, we're going to go through the existing channels which works. National governing bodies. We have partnerships with over 40, British Cycling included, British Triathlon. We have a lot of national governing bodies, which have always been amazing partners. So getting the message through them to their members is kind of a primary channel. We are not big into advertising campaigns. You'll hardly see an ad out there, maybe targeted ads in social, for example. Those will promote Training Peaks to help you, or Training Peaks Virtual to help you prepare for your race day, get a coach, make use of Training Peaks Virtual within your current subscription, for example. We're not going after any one particular, app out there. As I said, it's about providing more benefits to our current and future users. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but it's just bringing the authenticity and the ease of use, I guess, is probably the two main messages that we'll be promoting.
That's great to hear. George, the Founders Club was a big part of the community that you always told me in our interviews that indieVelo didn't have a community, it was a community. So those core members were there to invest via their subscription to support the growth and development of the platform. They were also the members that were most vested in the intellectual sweat equity behind brainstorming new features and testing use cases. How important was it for you when inking this deal that these early Founders Club members were looked after and thanked for their contributions?
Oh, extremely. I knew that was one of the early conversations that we had. As you say, there's been a huge amount of work put in by the community, and as well as thanking them through all the various extras that they got as part of indieVelo, one of the key things that we've done for them now is to give them each a whole free year of Training Peaks Premium. You see what happens in kind of other deals, and nickel and dime people here and there, and maybe you only get 3 months, or maybe you get 6 months, or it's kind of no. Let's just give everybody a year. Everybody has put in a huge amount, and it's right and proper to say thank you. And as Dirk was saying, this kind of health club model, where maybe people don't want to use all the different bits that come with Training Peaks, and that's fine. But there's plenty of stuff there, and the option to be able to tap into the strength stuff, or whether it's the calendar stuff, or the workout builders, or whatever else it is, to be able to give all of those kind of founders members a whole bunch of free stuff on top that they weren't even expecting is fantastic.
Dirk, The Training Peaks Virtual Customer Feedback Forum, has that been instituted to maintain the platform's community-driven approach?
Forum, I mean, we have user voice in terms of receiving feedback from the users. So certainly that's something that we groom every day and are actively looking at that, feedback coming in from the community. But now it's 10 times larger. Now that it's going to all of our subscribers, especially, again, our coaches. So what ideas do coaches have to create, that service offering that they can, build a better business on top of and have a better quality service, experience for their athletes. So certainly that's there, and we want to embrace that voice of customer. And we do have a user voice, channel for that, for Training Peaks Virtual.
And that's a really interesting, different take, isn't it? Because George, your forums and community discussions have been from the end users, not necessarily from the coaches. So it's a really interesting, different voice potentially coming in as well.
Oh, definitely. And it's great to be able to get both sides of that as well. The kind of the perspective from the athletes and the perspective from the coaches as well. So that it comes back to what we've been saying all along, that the purpose here is to add to what's there rather than fundamentally change it. And that core message around the purpose, as Dirk said, the intention here is not to kind of plow a bunch of VC money into it or anything like that, where you're beholden to someone else. We are both completely focused on building a great product for athletes and the coaches and the race organizers. It's for the people who actually use it. That's what we're all about. That's our driving force. And that's why we put so much effort into getting that feedback, is because we're not here to pretend that we know better. We're not here to pretend to get lots of money in to pay some investor off. We're here to build an amazing product for coaches and for athletes and race organizers and so on.
Yeah, I think that's key. Yeah, fundamentally, nothing has changed in terms of George's direction. Again, because we don't have that outside investment funding whereby we have to return a certain percentage in 3 years or they'll exit. And then we have to lay off a huge workforce. We're not under the gun like that. So it's just smart decisions along the way, as George has always done, and that'll continue.
As you mentioned, Dirk, using the health club analogy, we always knew that indieVelo, now Training Peaks Virtual, was never going to be free indefinitely. But there are some people that just want the spin class. Are there any plans to offer just a subscription to Training Peaks Virtual without the workout management software that's also involved?
I would say no. It's the very same conversation with strength. We could have done that with strength. You only care about lifting weights. We're not going to parse out an a la carte all of our services. We could have done that a long time ago. We're not in it to go after one particular market segment, if you will, become a dominant player in any one market segment. We are currently the number one player in this segment of a coach application, right? Or where athletes go to prepare for their event. All encompassing, holistic. We have nutrition, we have strength, we have indoor virtual training zones, compatibility with 80 different training devices and apps. We could have parsed every single one of those service offerings out a long time ago. It's definitely not the way to go. I believe in an open kind of ecosystem. And again, I've seen athletes change direction so often, even within the same year, and so it's fine if you only want to ride indoors for 4 months a year. We're still the same or cheapest game in town, other than free, right? There's free offerings out there after April 1st, as we know. We're not going to be free after probably April 1st. It'll be part of premium. But we're certainly not more expensive than any of the other leaders. In terms of price, you can't say we're more expensive.
Yeah, and fundamentally offer so much more. Again, back to the health club offering, it's not pay a subscription and only get the spin class. you're paying your subscription, and you get a spin class, and you get a gym, and you get a swimming pool, all for a price that's actually significantly less than elsewhere.
George, I am going to ask you, on a personal level, what does the integration into Training Peaks organisation mean for you?
Opportunity. As we were saying, this was never going to be one person forever. And the idea of adding resources into it, it's just such an obvious match, that kind of credibility side of it, the focus on committed athletes, the ability to now invest in what I've been doing all this time and make it go faster. That's fantastic. It'll be really interesting to see how this pans out, how, what doors this opens, what opportunities it brings.
I saved the $1 million question for the end of our conversation here, George. Can you give the community an idea of what innovations and features you're working on, or at least you see coming down the line in the short term? Specifically, when I say graphics to you, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
The first thing that comes to mind is, of course, that's one of the first conversations I had. Is kind of, okay, if we're going to invest into it, where are we going to put some money? And that was kind of top of the list. So yeah, and the honest answer to the wider question of, what does the roadmap look like? Where are we going? The honest answer to that is it depends on the feedback that we get. As I don't presume to know everything, but I am building an application that is for the coaches, that is for the athletes, it is for the race organisers. So let's listen to them, let's understand what people want, and then we'll go build that. And to your point on graphics, yes, lots of people have mentioned that, so we'll do that. But let's listen to all the other things that people say, and we'll do those things too.
Oh, it's brilliant. Dirk, just finally, what do you think will be Training Peaks' virtual impact on the space over the next 5 years? What will be the USP that distinguishes it?
Well, I mean, majority of coaches today don't offer any kind of services indoors. They leave it up to the individual athlete to figure it out on their own. They're putting in structured workouts on our calendar, which are compatible with all the indoor cycling apps. It's then up to athlete how to conduct that workout. They can do it on their Garmin watch. They could ride indoors and just follow it on their Garmin Edge 850, or they can connect it to Apple TV and run some other app. But now the coach is like, oh, now I can really play a part in this, and I can help my athlete figure this out in a very easy win, if you will. So I want to see this expand across the coaching spectrum, whereas very few coaches today are taking advantage of indoor cycling experience. This can embrace them, bring in their branding into the virtual world for exposure with their kits, with their races, with their group rides, private, public, however they want to run it. I'm really focused on just educating coaches on the value and how they can actually create a new revenue, stream and a new offering over the winter or summer, whatever it might be.
I would add to that that the key thing that will happen over the next few years is that seamlessness. Great word. The ability to just to have something that just works. As Dirk was saying, there are a lot of hurdles here. There are a lot of steps and barriers for coaches that kind of prevent the coaches from giving their athletes a completely seamless experience. And to be able to merge in the virtual stuff with the existing Training Peaks offering, to be able to have your training zones just automatically sync between the two, that your calendar automatically syncs between the two, that a coach can just set something up and the athlete just presses a button in their calendar and magically they're in a virtual world riding that workout without them needing to do anything else. That seamless integration from the coach thinking of something to the athlete just doing it, that's the vision.
So before we conclude, I just want to thank both of you gentlemen. This has been an invaluable conversation for the community to hear, and we very much appreciate it. And George, you've had a loyal following that has basically helped you get to this point. The hive mind mentality in the forum, something that I've really admired, and you were the one who's fostered that culture. What is the last word? What do you want to tell the community before we finish up with our conversation here?
Thank you. I really, this whole idea that indieVelo didn't have a community, it was a community. That wasn't some kind of strapline that dreamt up by some marketing person. It is what it was. The community provided those ideas, but I was just kind of the person typing the code. But the idea of building an application that was for riders, that something that they wanted because it served their needs, that's the core of it. And that core continues, and it's going to be an amazing ride.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you both ever so much for joining us today. George, Gilbert, Dirk Friel, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you both and to really get both sides of the story in terms of Training Peaks Virtual. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, definitely. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, you can subscribe to the Virtual Velo Podcast on your favourite podcast provider and, of course, on YouTube. You can follow me, Emma Martin, on Instagram at biking_Emma. You can follow Chris at TheZamunique, and you can head over to thezamunique.com and sign up for the bi-monthly newsletter to support independent cycling esports journalism. We have some more impactful guests from the world of cycling esports coming soon, as you would expect of the Virtual Velo Podcast, including Project Echelon's Eric Hill to announce plans of the Echelon Racing League and the 2025 USA Cycling Esports National Championships on my whoosh. Special thanks to George and to Dirk for joining us today and sharing the insight with the community. Stay safe, enjoy your riding. We'll be back soon. Goodbye.